A thread by Soul War. President Trump's amazing strategy to let the Democrats destroy themselves is working. The reason the mask never slipped fully to reveal their demonic nature before now was due to the GOP's inclination to barter and treat with them as if they were negotiating in good faith. This allowed millions of Americans, including me in the 80s and 90s, to proudly follow these deceivers and extol their policies as benevolent and worthy. The mean old GOP was always holding the DNC back from fully implementing those noble policies. Darn them, nothing ever changed. What caused me to move from a Democrat to a reluctant Republican? Bill Clinton and his co-president Hillary Clinton, that's who. By Bill's second term, I had come to despise their brand of politics as vapid, power-hungry at our expense, and damaging to the nation. So I voted for W. By 2005, I'd come to regret ever having been a Democrat, as everything they seemed to be doing during the Iraq War set my teeth on edge. Also, during this time, Americans became aware of no-go zones along our southern border. Mainstream media got the word out, stay out of those areas. I knew exactly what those signs indicated. Cahoots. And I can tell you when America went from defending its borders, even for show, to allowing the cartels to roam free, unimpeded. 1996, Bill Clinton's second term, the outrages by the DNC and mainstream media began to rack up as my rage began to build. Numerous covert operations were blown by the legacy media with zero pushback from the Bush administration other than strongly worded condemnations. As the casualties began mounting, I realized politics wasn't just driving the conflict, that's normal. It was sabotaging it. The State Department forced special operations to include the Pakistani ISI in operations in Afghanistan, even though we knew they were the ones who were bankrolling and training many of the very Taliban and Al-Qaeda that we were hunting. Every operation was compromised. As this was happening, the mainstream media flexed their muscles by bullhorning the Democrats' opposition to Bush's war using the most inflammatory rhetoric possible. Baby killers and casting U.S. troops as terrorizing peaceful Iraqis, etc. People began attacking soldiers in the states. Service personnel were ordered to wear civilian clothes in public to avoid being harassed and assaulted. The vile rhetoric suddenly stopped as if someone shut off a valve after a U.S. airman in uniform just returned from Iraq was shot dead on his parents' sidewalk by a lunatic. Sitting in the back of the patrol car, the lunatic crowed, "This is for the Iraq War." He'd never met his victim before that moment. Well, that vile rhetoric is back, and now the DNC hasn't just doubled down on it, they're quadrupling down with rage as the MSM shills with glee. I watched Obama abandon Iraq, and I knew that status of forces agreement was fumbled on purpose because, just like the Vietnam War, America can never, ever be allowed to win as founded until they can implement their Marxist Xanadu. We are about to be beaten into submission. Then came ISIS, as my disquiet began to slowly morph into despair. I watched their successes and atrocities mount as Obama preened and the press moaned in admiration. No Western leader had the pragmatic capability to answer this threat. And then Hillary was to be Obama's successor. And then some weird orange-haired media star showed up to challenge her. True, the GOP field was pretty large. Would he get lost in the crowd? I remembered Trump from the 80s. Marla Maples, all that, and thought shallow guy, daddy's money at play, and dismissed him. Whoopsie. Trump proceeded to savage his GOP competition and handily won the nomination. I glowered. I was Cruz's crew. Now we were truly lost. It's Hillary for sure. So I watched a Trump rally to determine his flaws, so I'd know why America was about to be driven over a cliff by Hillary. By mid August, I was not only fervently pro Trump and MAGA, I was sure he'd win. When he showed up for that photo op in Louisiana with 75,000 in disaster aid, he cinched it. I have watched Trump since the day he came down that golden escalator. I know his most basic strategy. He spent over 40 years at the Democrats' most powerful personages' elbows, listening and learning from them, not to become them, but to stop them. And he is stopping them effectively. So how? How does he do it? He gets out of their way. For 70 years, the GOP pushed back and fought. This forced the Democrats to modify and concede their positions and policies to get things done. People thinking Trump's election victory drove them mad are missing it. This is who they are. I've been shouting that they're stealth Marxists for 2 decades as people looked at me funny. As the radical left slowly and stealthily insinuated itself into the courts, academia, entertainment, and news, anyone who called out what was happening was labeled a crackpot. When Hillary won and Americans began to realize the danger, it would have been too late. So Trump has bought us a reprieve to show Americans what's behind the mask. Take a real good look. Because Americans died to provide you this chance, Trump simply pursues our interests as he tweet storms the hell out of them. He doesn't force them to modify their positions. I've used the phrase abuse of citizenry a lot lately. The shadow America the left has slowly planned out and built over the last 70 years was funded and fueled off their abuse of us. America last, platitudes and posturing as they lied and lied as our freedoms slipped away. Trump could try and tell Americans in those blue states all about what he's learned from the left and what they had in store for us. They simply wouldn't have believed him. So he's forced to show them firsthand a brutal lesson to immunize Americans for at least 2 generations. As he dismantles that world they invested everything into, they strike back at him and hit us with every blow. Their demonic nature is now starkly visible for all to see. Communism openly championed. BLM proudly shout, Black criminal lives matter. They were always insane. As I, Brian, Draw and Strike, and Carlos C. Oswita, have said going on several years now, Democrats are no longer being saved from themselves. Trump just got out of their way. So some of them are literally going to destroy themselves and their cities along with it. Hashtag get out. Understand the savage brilliance of this as the radical left tried to collapse America with a pandemic and then with an insurrection to goad President Trump into a harsh military crackdown. All Trump does is say the governors and mayors need to do their jobs. It's savage because people are dying as a result. But that, hear me clearly here, is not Trump's fault. No sane American looks at these deep blue cities and blames the president for the lawless chaos. He's been trumpeting law and order all along as the left chants hashtag Trump's America. As those deep blue cities descend into hell zones, sane Americans are fleeing them in droves. Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk are examples of people being forced to move because the ideologues running those cities and states refuse to restore order as long as Trump is president. Now, Justice Ginsburg has died, clinging to her SCOTUS seat in a vain attempt to hand it off to an ideological successor. Did you know Obama pressured Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire during his last term? The story is she refused because she wanted to do so under another Clinton presidency. Nice story. The truth is that SCOTUS seat was a crown jewel of hundreds of federal judgeships being prepared for Hillary and Bill's pay for play third and fourth terms in office. That's right. Federal judicial posts were left vacant so the Clintons could sell them to their cronies. So Ginsburg was forced to soldier on long past the time she should have retired until her body finally gave out. I'm mortified and angry at that. At the whole rotten mess in DC. Her last 3 years were poor civil service to the nation. She was dying and seriously impaired. In a sane and healthy nation, she would have retired under Obama. Period. Fuck your greed, Hillary. But now, another lesson is being taught to us by the left as Trump washes from the road holding rallies. What lesson? Terrorism is the new normal for Democrats. Not even kidding. Every one of these tweets is a crime. The mask hasn't just slipped, it's gone. What I've called the polarizing break is well underway. Sane versus insane. Civilized versus savage is now on full display. President Trump is mitigating loss of life when possible, both openly and covertly. But he simply allowed the Democrats to reveal their hearts and minds to anyone paying attention, and it's hideous. Last month, 62% of Americans said they're afraid to speak their political beliefs openly. That was last month. Now we have every blue check mark on Twitter melting down to assure us it's war. Kill the old turtle, that'll stop them. And as President Trump quickly moves to hashtag fill the seat, it will only intensify as even the most die-hard Democrat voters shudder in horror. So severe is the abuse in blue states, I predict to you that there's not only a silent majority in this nation determined to vote Trump, a huge chunk of it is stealth Trump supporters who growl when his name is mentioned in public, but who will vote for him on November 3rd. I predicted the polarizing break. I said we've entered a 50-day gauntlet where the left will lash and howl at us without mercy. In 2019, a critical New York Times meeting was leaked to the public by Judas goats to prepare awakened Americans. Racism 24/7 was coming. Do you see it yet? I'll end with this excellent clip from my YouTube channel in 2019. Please share it with everyone you know. Link in the thread. Everything happening now is them clawing at your soul. Don't give in to fear or to despair. If you do, they win. And they deserve what's coming. Fight them with calm joy. Thanks for listening. To support Brent Cates' works, donate any amount at paypal.me/Brent Cates. And remember,
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.